you do not know where to start with your Stephen King journey, you know, you've been wanting to read him for a little bit, but you don't know what book to start with, look no further than Misery. It is a very tight, condensed, but very thrilling and a classic Stephen King book as well. Just think it has everything that you want from Stephen King. How's it going, guys? Starting point here. My name is Devin, and today we will be reviewing Misery by Stephen King. Now, this book was released in 1987, and it is his 15th novel, I think. And, you know, this came at a time where he just released It in 1986, and then he followed that up with Eyes of the Dragon, and, you know, that book didn't get too many great reviews or reception because it was a young adult fantasy, and that's not what King is known for. He's known for his It book, like his scary, horror, supernatural creatures books, you know what I mean? So after they criticized him, King did not like that. So in order to combat them, he wrote this book, which deals with crazy fans by themselves. And I think this is a very good book. You know, I first watched the movie when I was about, 9 or 10, because it's a very good adaptation as well. Most people who haven't read the book have seen the movie, and most people who have read the book have also seen the movie. Might as well just throw it out there. You know, Kathy Bates did a great job as always, and I just think the movie very perfectly captured the tone of the book. Now, before we start, you know, I just like to throw it out there that I haven't read a lot of Stephen King. You know, I'm in my third book right now as I make this video, so I'm very new, but that is why I'm making this channel, and why I'm making these videos is basically to talk over my thoughts with them, and maybe you guys could discuss these with me. You know, I haven't read all of his books. You know, I'm no King super fan, but I will get there. I'm learning it along as I go. And I think this book was a really good start for me. I think it was a very good, read. I read it in 5 days. I could not put the book down. I could not stop thinking about it. So it definitely enticed me to keep reading. And I plan on doing that for a pretty long time because he has a lot of books. And I'd also like to say that this portion of the video is spoiler free, while the later portion has spoilers. Now, if somehow you do not know the plot of this book, it involves an author named Paul Sheldon, who is very famous, and he just came off his Misery series, which is like a romantic drama with Misery the main character. And at the end of the 4th book, Misery dies and the series ends. So as the series ends, Paul Sheldon decides to move on, and he writes a book that he's really enjoying called Fast Cars. And as he finishes the first script, he gets a little drunk on some champagne, goes on a car ride, and crashes. Now, the person to save him happens to be none other than Annie Wilkes, who claims to be his #1 fan. As she grabs him while he's unconscious, she puts him in his house and takes care of him and treats him back to health because she was a former nurse. As she gets him to normal health, he kind of just spends the whole story in her bed or in a wheelchair. And that's where the whole story takes place, is inside her house right there. Throughout the book, you kind of understand the pain he's going through. You understand, the characters, the only 2 characters in this book that are Annie Wilkes and Paul Sheldon, and you see how both of them, function. And throughout the book, Paul is, very gravely injured. Throughout the weeks, though, he gets better and better. And throughout the weeks, also, he sees Annie, who seems nice at first, who's secretly a little psycho. And, his main goal goes from getting back to health to, I gotta escape this house, whether, I'm healthy or not. Paul Sheldon is a really good protagonist, as he, he's an author with some problems. He's been divorced twice. He has, a few issues. The mission to escape this house seems almost impossible, as it feels like she's done everything possible to lock him in, and it's out in the middle of nowhere, and there's no other people that visit her house. Now, I'm not trying to give away too much, but what also happens in this book is that while he's recovering, she does get the latest copy of Misery, and she reads it, and she decides that she does not like it. So she makes him make a new book entirely for Annie Wilkes by the name of Misery's Return, in which he has to resurrect this character and write a whole new novel just to please his fans. I'd also like to mention is, Annie Wilkes' use of language. She says words like cockadoodie and she says dirty birdie, and she says other just kind of crazy cartoonish words. And I think it very accurately represents her character, because she has just certain things about her that you don't know. She has either bipolar, depressive disorder, schizophrenia, like obsessive compulsive disorder, things of that nature. Like, you can't tell what is exactly wrong with her. You know, she has a farm, but you know, like, the animals aren't treated properly. She goes away on these mysterious trips. Like, you just don't know about this character. And then as Annie does all these things, Paul Sheldon's sitting in his room and he doesn't know what's going on. I'd also like to mention the tone. The tone of this book is so good. I think Stephen King does a great job in, you know, presenting the tone, as it's super eerie. The best quality of this book is that I can't really think of a flaw. I didn't find a flaw when I read it. You know, there was nothing that held me back or slowed me down. I just breezed through it. It was a very fast book. As I said, I read it in 5 days. The thing that got me into King the most too, as this being my first book I ever read, is I really liked the way he wrote characters. I really think the way he wrote them is super realistic. They're flawed, but to a certain extent. They're never overly flawed. They're never perfect. Like, I could see Paul Sheldon being a real person. Annie Wilkes, I could see, but you know, like, she's, you know, up there. And this book is engaging throughout. Like, I was constantly reading, and like, I forced myself to finish this book because I just wanted to know what was happening. Because literally the ending, I didn't know what was gonna happen. I didn't know how he was gonna manage this impossible task. And I think if you still haven't read the book at this point, please do it. You're sleeping on it, and I think you just need to get out there immediately. Okay, now we're gonna get into spoilers. You know, if you haven't read the book yet, please leave. You can stay if you want, but just keep the video on mute maybe. I don't know. But we're gonna be talking about spoilers. Now, the first scene we gotta talk about is the pill scene. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's when Annie goes and leaves, or it's when Annie goes and gets some paper from the store and a new typewriter, you know, with the missing N, and he doesn't like the paper, even though it's the most expensive one. So how could it possibly be bad? But he says it smudges, and he demands her to go get him some new paper. And while she leaves to go get new paper, he's on his wheelchair, and he very quickly tries to escape the room. Also, throughout the book, Annie hooks him on 2 pain pills every 4 or so hours. So that's literally, he takes like, you know, 8 a day. So then eventually he never becomes hooked on them, and that causes problems later down the line in the book. So Annie leaves to go get him his new paper, and while she leaves, she locks the door. Now Paul, having read in his last book about, you know, a car thief who breaks into cars, he knows a thing or two about pickpocketing. So he, like, you know, very quickly tries to unlock this door, and then as he does it, the thing snaps inside the door. But then after like 2 more tries, he finally gets the door open, and he escapes. Now he goes out of his room for the first time in the book, and his main goal is to go to the bathroom to get some more pain pills, because he is hurting so bad and he can't go without them. Now while he gets them, he thinks, maybe I can actually escape. So he goes out on his wheelchair to the living room, into the kitchen, and he sees a telephone, but the telephone is disconnected. So he can't call anyone. He checks all the doors are locked. And while he's doing this, she comes home. And I think this is the most intense scene in the entire book. This was my favorite scene in the book, and because it's just so tense, as he's just trying to escape, and he's trying to back out, and he's trying to get this stupid, you know, wheelchair to work. And as he's doing it, like, she slowly starts getting better. She drops things, and like, you know, he's just breaking out in this crazy sweat. But he manages to survive and escape, but not without looking a little suspicious. And then she later realizes that he did sneak out due to the thing still stuck in the door. And then he escapes a couple more times, and each time, you know, one time he grabs a knife, one time he searches through her scrapbook, which shows a history of all the people she killed while she was a nurse, and it was 100 or something, and she moved from town to town, finally settling in Boulder, Colorado, where she killed elderlies, and she eventually just started killing infants simply because she felt bad for them. This got her fired and investigated, where she was seen as not guilty due to them not being able to prove that she did any of it. But then after the 3 times, she starts getting really suspicious, and she puts hairs in the book and stuff, like just super weird stuff. Like she puts hairs in the attic, and then she accuses him of going up in the attic, and he's like, "What, Annie? How could I have been up in the attic? I can't walk." But he's still weak, and he like uses the typewriter as like a lifting thing, to get stronger. And then he's trying to hide his health. And like one time, like he slips from his bed to his wheelchair on his own, and she notices because she's like watching him through the door. And this basically concludes with her knowing what's up, grabbing an axe, and we all know it, she cuts his foot off. And one of the most brutal things I've probably read. I haven't read a lot, but this so far was the, most brutal thing I've read. I feel so bad for him because, she just tortures him throughout this whole book. Like when her first outburst and her spilling the soup, just all these different little outbursts, just makes him threaten for his life. And as he's thinking it inside the book, eventually he's just like, you know what? If I die, I think it's better than what I'm going through right now, which is crazy, which is a crazy thought. Then you have scenes like where that cop came, and then he broke the window and said, "Hey, help me, help me." And then Annie ended up running him over with a lawnmower, which is just the most badass scene. But it also just proves how crazy she is and how, lucky she gets. And it just shows Paul Sheldon more just like, how can I escape this lady when the cop can't even escape her? And also about this book, Misery's Return, I really love the scenes where it just had text of miseries, because he starts warming up to it. Like at first he's writing it against his will, and then he ends up cheating the beginning, her just coming back like, oh no, she was alive after all. Annie had that freak out saying how he cheated and all that stuff, and then him having to rewrite the beginning. And then as he was writing, he slowly started figuring out like this new lore in it, and he was like, oh wait, this connects to that connects to that, the bee stings, she's related to this person. And then he ends up writing his best misery novel. And I think that was a really underrated part of the book, is just the misery part, because I thought it was like some of the best stuff in the whole entire book, if I'm being honest. Also that scene where she makes him burn his draft in the fire. She knew, and he knew that like that was the only copy he had, and it's gone forever. He cannot get it back. Also, I really like the sweet moments, like the moments like, where she rolled out the TV and they watched something, you know what I mean? They like watched whatever flick was on the TV that time. And, I just liked the sweet moments because it was just mini breaks in the tension. Like I liked how Stephen kind of showed how she was actually human sometimes and not just all demonic or all crazy. But now let's talk about this ending. So at this point, he's missing a thumb, he's missing a leg, his mentally, his mind is just tortured, physically he's tortured, he's still can't really walk, and he's just ready to die. He's finishing this book, and he kind of wants to know, just as much as Annie does, how this book will turn out. And Annie has made it clear, as soon as he finishes his book, she will kill both herself and him. So basically this book is the only thing keeping both of them alive. Annie goes into this depressive state too, where she's like hurting herself, biting her lips, scratching herself, and then she goes to what's called her, I think it's her fun house or something, where she just drives off and stays there for 2 nights. And then like she doesn't even milk her cows, she doesn't really take care of anything, and he's left to fend by himself, which is one of the reasons he escapes. And the book concludes with a lot of reporters end up showing to her house, trying to interview her while she's smuggling, Paul in this room. Like another cop comes and interviews her, and like, she's a hot topic at the moment. And this ending, I'll tell you, was brilliant. I really liked it. I liked the champagne scene. I liked the part where he fakes burning his book and she freaks out, and then he ended up missing, hitting her in the head with the typewriter, but she ended up dying because he like put the book's ashes in her mouth and she ends up like tripping and like breaking her skull on the thing. But the thing is, that was so brilliant. Like, he was crying on this ground, and he still kept thinking like, she's still alive. She's still alive. There's no way she's dead from just that. And he was right. She was still alive because she got up, and she ended up, you know, I think dying like while at the shed or something. He gets saved and he gets rescued. Now he's all good, but he still has visions of her. You know, they want to write this nonfiction book, but he doesn't want to. You know, he ends up releasing Misery's Return, and all is well, but he's traumatized for life. So I also love the scene where she like shoved him down into the attic, and you know, he had to sit there with like, I think it's like rats or something, and that's when he gets the idea of burning the book. Gosh, I think I talked about most of it. I don't know what else is there to talk about. There might be something I'm missing, I'm not quite sure, but I think I got the main gist of it. You know, me personally, this was just a really great introduction to King. The characters were great, you know, the plot was great, the premise was great. There wasn't any supernatural stuff yet, which, you know, I could go without for the first read. You know, I just like a human-to-human interaction. I love just how crazy she is. I love Stephen King's message of how crazy humans can be at some points. You know, it's just a really, really, really solid book, and I recommend this to anyone. I think anyone can read this book and enjoy it, even if you don't like scary stuff, honestly. Even if you don't like King's works, I think it's just a really great one-off book. This has no ties to the extended universe, I don't think. I've heard about that, and you know, I'll probably get to that in a later time, but right now, this has really no ties to anything besides it taking place in Boulder, Colorado, which is the location for, I think, quite a few books. But I'm not too sure because I've only read, you know, 3 books at this point. Let me know what you guys think. Drop a comment. Is there anything I missed? Is there any of your favorite scenes? Any of your flaws? Anything like that? Comment down below. Let me know what other books you want me to review. I think I'll review every book I read. That was the book Misery. Really great, really solid book. I really love it, and this will probably be a book that sticks with me forever just because it's just so good. And I think on multiple rereads, I think the book will even get better and better and better. But anyways, drop a subscribe, drop a like, and you know, just keep commenting, and I'll just keep making videos. Goodbye.